So this part is lengthy, but I'll just explain some components of it. So I always encourage our people to find in-person and virtual classes, programs, and events to talk about economic development, financial resources. There are a lot of organizations, schools, institutions that are providing virtual and in-person events and classes and programs. A lot of it's paid through our taxes that can be grant funded. So I recommend looking at websites for libraries, websites for schools, join the city, state, email listservs. You'll get all types of information about local organizations, national organizations, including global organizations that can be doing some wonderful events virtually and in person that can benefit you. It doesn't mean that you will agree with even most things. You can have varying political, economic viewpoints, but you'll find parts that you can find useful to help you. And as I mentioned earlier, make sure you find legally approved financial planners and legally approved tax preparers. And remember, it's someone who is by law allowed to do your taxes in that sense, which is different from if you want to do your own taxes or you have friends or family doing it. Someone who's getting paid to do taxes and they're presenting themselves as an official tax preparer, you got to make sure that they know the legal requirements to do so. You also want basic planning advice, some basic resources and basic services. So this means that we all have certain knowledge about some things, but the wonderful thing about having a legitimate financial planner, economic planner, is that they admit when they have to research something further and get back to you. And what they do is they'll research themselves and they will contact their colleagues. And this is where the next one comes in, having one-on-one conversation. So my financial planner is a Black man, and he's been my financial planner for 10 years now. And he asked one of the colleagues, who's a Black woman, about what's the best way to give our people advice when I do these economic development community presentations. Her response to him, to tell me, is that encourage our people to, in addition to attending events to talk about economic development, schedule one-on-one meetings with someone who specializes in workforce development, similar to when we talk about health and medical services, education services. You want someone who does this one-on-one, in-person communication to talk about workforce development, economic development, financial resources that you need, because there's no one size fits all. They can give you some overall advice, but it doesn't mean everything pertains to you. The next one, looking at simple investments. If you go to your financial planner and say you want to start doing investments, a good financial planner will not get you started doing everything. A horrible financial advisor will say, yeah, we're going to put all your money into this. And they won't think wisely and just take it bit by bit. They'll throw it all in there so it could all be lost if something happens. But a good financial advisor is someone who's strategic. They pay attention to details. They pay attention to economic ups and downs locally, nationally, and globally. Because remember, the global trade impacts national trade, local trade. All of this is impacted. So that is how investments are done. There also are wonderful financial planners. When they do investments, they actually research the investment. So if you're someone who wants to make sure there's an investment that's not coming from something that's exploitative and harmful to people. So for example, I would not want to do investments that are based on things like diamonds and gold and all those things. So therefore, my financial advisor makes sure that it's not something that's based on that kind of profit. Therefore, you do not want wealth that's based on that kind of profit. And so therefore, you also want to understand that investments cannot be everything that's just trendy all the time on the internet as well, because there are people all over social media And sometimes you'll see people in the streets doing presentations, and they'll say, "We can help you do Bitcoin. We can help you do this. We can help you do that." And they'll say, my friend now lives in a mansion because they did this. And I always tell people, don't just jump into that. Okay. The next one, simple wealth building. Wealth building means you're building up your savings, something that can hold you if something happens, a health emergency, something regarding to where you live, if you lose a job or something, it's supposed to be able to carry you for a while to be able to pay your bills and everything else. So that's building the savings, then building your investments, your retirement, anything that pertains to that. And here, I always want to remind people, wealth building does not mean that you have to want to be a millionaire. There's no shame if you do, but I just want our people to understand wealthy, wanting to build wealth, wanting to have savings, investments, does not mean that you are invested in having a mansion and taking up land for no reason in these huge houses and spending money on these expensive cars. Okay. I want our people to instead understand centuries of Black economic development that have been addressed since even before Booker T. Washington, even before Maggie Lena Walker, even before Du Bois, Marcus Garvey, Harold Cruz, Thomas Sowell, and all of them. Even Huey P. Newton explained components of how Black capitalism can be effective if we're careful in how it's done. So you want to make sure you do not diminish wealth to mean something that it does not necessarily mean. The next one, cash flow planning. As I mentioned earlier about having a savings account, the same thing goes. Where's your cash being saved? Emergency funds, medical and health resources, and retirement funds. Also regarding medical and health resources, do your best to access resources that you do not have to pay for. So for example, there are mental health support groups where you do not have to pay. And that includes people who do not have health insurance. So I always encourage our people to research this information, and people can contact me if you need help with that as well. And the last but not least part, this is where you look at retirement income, pension, Social Security benefits, the Social Security disability insurance for people with disability, living will, life insurance, all of these different components throughout our lives that are processes that we need to consider. They don't happen quickly, so these are processes. And so as I mentioned earlier, artists, Black artists are intellectuals and scholars. It all goes together, and Harold Cruz explained that as well. Black artists, intellectual scholars are the foundation and the core of our people and of our people's Black political development and Black economic development. And as Harold Cruz explained, Black politicians and Black civil rights leaders have a role to play, but they are not the core of our people's foundation. They're not the core of our people's progress for political and economic development. Instead, it's the artists who are intellectuals and scholars. Those go together. Artists, intellectuals, scholars all go together. Those are the cores, okay? So that means Black culture is the foundation for Black progress. So up here, you just think about this. What are components of Black culture that you can think about that contribute to Black economic development? What are some things that you have in your life that are contributing to your own economic development? This is a question that we ask people when people are thinking about whether it could be entrepreneurship in terms of formal entrepreneurship, or people might become a consultant, or they might get paid as a grant writer, or get paid to be on board of directors, because there are some board of directors that pay people. This is where you have to ask yourself, what are some cultural components that you have? And what are some resources that we have as people? Black educators, Black writers, Black organizations, Black leaders and decision makers, Black visual art. This is why I always tell our people, and I encourage our people, instead of highlighting the problems, now let's highlight what are the resources that we have. That's the development of the inner world that